Today, we talk with Jen McGuinness. She's the author and photographer of the book, Bird-Friendly Gardening. We cover topics such as the best range of plant sizes for a bird habitat, the value of a backyard water feature, birds and window collisions and how you can prevent them, the value of native plants in supporting bird populations, and we also have tips for doing your own bird photography. Today, it's episode 409, Bird-Friendly Gardening. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon jungle in suburban purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. Let's go. Providing food, nesting habit, water, and a toxin-free environment for the thousands of bird species that call North America home is more important than ever. Hundreds of these bird species are in population decline or at risk of extinction. Whether they're permanent residents, seasonal guests, or maybe they're just passing through during migration, providing birds with the resources they need in a home-based habitat garden is an important part of the solution, no matter where in North America you might call home. And a lot of it is detailed right here in this book, Bird-Friendly Gardening. Bird-Friendly Gardening. It's by garden writer Jen McGuinness, who is also the author of another garden book called Microfood Gardening, and she's the power behind the force of the website frauzinnie.com. Frau Zinnie, as in Mrs. Zinnia. She champions organic and wildlife-friendly gardening. She brings a background in journalism, communications, and storytelling to her work, a photographer too. And Jen was telling me that she was just out taking pictures of birds. I would like to start with that. How do you take pictures of birds, Jen?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. And yeah, I do have a lot of birds that come to my garden because I've made it, bird friendly. So I do sit out there. I don't quite sit inside like one of those hides, but I will kind of blend in with the shrubbery and just wait out certain birds. There's a good variety that come here in my Connecticut garden, they visit either today it was the coneflowers. They were like the most popular visitor was the goldfinch eating those. And I had some cardinals come by. So it was great. And I have some Canon gear. So I definitely love to just sit out there when I have time, when I'm not working, and just take some snaps of the birds visiting the gardens.
All right, so you're using a camera versus using a phone.
Yes, definitely. I have a long lens. So the one I use is, if I remember correctly, a 200 to 400. But like you have to use it when it's pretty bright out because of the way the aperture is. Now I'm getting too dorky and nerdy about camera gear, but it does the trick. And that's all that matters.
Do you use a tripod?
No, for the most part, I don't. I usually do use a tripod, though, if I'm going to use the video setting on my camera, just because then, it'll pick up every little quiver. So I will use the tripod for video. But for still shots, I tend to move around a lot. So I don't like the tripod holding me back.
The photography in the book, Bird-Friendly Gardening, is phenomenal. And in fact, you won an award for all the photos, didn't you?
So it placed in GardenCom in the Silver Laurels in the Media Awards. So like an overall book award, which was absolutely amazing and made my entire summer. So that was great.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What I really like too is, now you're gardening in Connecticut. You and your husband bought a home there. And one of the first things you did was rip out your lawn. Good for you. But I would think back east, ripping out a lawn is not as common an occurrence as it would be here in California.
Right. Yeah. I was definitely viewed as, who moved into our neighborhood? What is happening here? Over time, they've gotten used to me. Now they actually stop by and they ask me questions about the yard. And funny thing, we had a tag sale earlier this year, and people were more interested in going into the garden and walking around than looking at the stuff I had at the tag sale. So I was like, oh, this is a good compliment if they're going right into the garden. But yeah, it's starting to get a little more popular out here in the Northeast, where people are carving up their lawns more, putting in more native plants, more garden spaces. So, lawn is still pretty much king, but we have some good pockets of gardening and gardens popping up there around the state.
In defensive lawns in the east, it does rain there in the summertime.
Usually it does, but this year, oh man, they're really, it's really testing our patience. We're not getting as much rain as possible. So everything is looking a little crispy at the moment.
I mentioned you're in Zone 6B, USDA Zone 6B. We were recording this in early September after Labor Day, and I know that in a lot of the country, Labor Day kind of marks the transition from summer into fall, whereas here in California, the transition into fall is usually marked by Halloween,
Oh, wow.
a month and a half later. So does it feel like fall there now?
Yeah, it's definitely, like the lack of daylight, I would say like we're losing so much light at the end of the day now. The sun sets at like around 7:30, which which I hate because I'm definitely, I love the sunshine. But yeah, the air is a little bit crisper, even though we still get hot during the day. And a lot of plants that are starting to show up for the fall, like the Joe Pye weed is blooming, the asters are getting ready. So, all those visual cues are happening to help bring in the season.
Have the leaves started falling from the trees yet?
We've had a few drop, but I think it's more because of the drought. It's definitely not because of the fall colors yet. We still have probably 4 or 5 more weeks till that really gets underway.
So what is your usual first frost date and your last frost date?
Usually it's late October is our first frost. And then the last frost they say is the last week of April, but everyone pretty much just uses Mother's Day as a safe the safe zone to put things out because even though we are supposed to be frost free at that point, we usually get like at least one kicker, so everyone's just treats it as Mother's Day as the safe zone.
That is a very good idea. Well,
Yeah.
let's dive into the book, Bird Friendly Gardening. And of course, I love to attract birds myself as well. And one thing I've discovered over the years is if you have a water feature in your yard, especially with the sound of moving water, it's amazing how many birds find it. And providing fresh water for birds is a great habit to get into, isn't it?
Yes, actually, it's one of the main things that will help attract them to your garden is that water source, especially like here in the Northeast in the wintertime when all our natural sources of water are frozen over. Having a heated bird bath will definitely bring in the birds. That's how I actually had my first bluebirds show up in my garden because they just happened to be flying overhead and they saw that there was some water available for them to drink. But you're right, like that sound of the moving water, that will bring them in. And yeah, you can put your bird bath at different heights to attract different birds. It's definitely a sure thing, definite win. And one of the most important things about including water in your garden is just making sure that you keep it clean and you keep it fresh. You don't want to leave those bird baths out and let them get stagnant.
Also, the placement of it as well for a lot of reasons. I mean, from a selfish standpoint, we like to put the water features that are going to attract birds within sight of the kitchen window so that you can watch them all day and into the evening and all the birds that come to it. Another good reason for where you place that bird bath is, well, cats. Cats
Yes.
kind of like to stalk out birds, especially at bird baths.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case everywhere. So you want to make sure you have those bird baths in a spot where the birds can see the predators coming. Having shrubs or trees nearby, like between 6 to 10 feet, is ideal because it'll give birds a chance to escape. And that's also true for hawks too. If you have hawks in your area, having cover for them to evacuate into is also very helpful.
I remember one time in our fountain, which is only 2 inches deep, as you recommend in the book when you're getting a bird bath. One time a hawk landed in it and was just sitting in the water and it like took up the whole bird bath. I go, what are you doing there?
That's awesome.
But getting back now, so how do you clean a bird bath?
So I usually try to refresh the water, especially in the summertime, every day. I use a bristle brush to scrub it, and that's the inside part. And different bird baths, like I have primarily like concrete ones, but there's different surfaces that some are easier to clean than others. But I scrub it really well. and then fill it with fresh water about, say, like every 3 to 4 days. I'll do the vinegar mixture to clean the bird bath, and that's 9 parts water to 1 part vinegar. So you use that to scrub really well, and then, rinse it out, dump it out, rinse it out, and then refill it. So that's what I use just to keep it from getting mucky. And there's also a bleach ratio too. I tend not to need to use the bleach one, I think, because I just clean it so regularly. So I use the vinegar one. I find it easier.
Yeah, especially if you have a recirculating pump moving that water around it and you want to clean it. If you use too harsh of a bleach, you could damage that pump.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you definitely you're undertaking a lot there.
And sometimes that's a bit of a chore to, empty out all the water, scrub it, and then refill it. How often do you have to do that?
Well, I usually do like every couple days, like 3 to 4. I have one of those solar pumps. So it's pretty small, and I usually, scrub that really well, and I blast it with the hose with, like, just like a shower setting. I'll push the water through it. So my setup isn't that complicated. It sounds like you have a more complicated one with the recirculating system with your fountain.
Yes, with the pump buried, beneath the water that you have to dig for, and run a sump pump to pump all the water out.
Wow. Yeah. So you're more complicated than I am.
I mentioned at the start that there are hundreds of bird species in population decline or at risk of extinction. How much is the cat responsible for that?
Oh, a good amount, actually. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service estimates that an average of 2.4 billion birds are killed by cats every year. So that's a very large percentage. So obviously, if you can keep your cats indoors, that would be a big help to helping save the birds. And birds have a lot of things up against them to begin with, between the migration, all the risks they encounter there. So anything we can do to just make their lives a little easier, keeping cats indoors is one of them.
And also the placement of other plants or shrubs nearby can either dissuade cats or provide an escape route for the birds too. So you don't really want to bury that fountain or bird bath in a jungle to give the cat a hiding place. But I would think you would want some nearby shrubs or trees to allow the bird to escape to.
Yeah, exactly. Birds will not really go to a bird bath that's like wide open in the middle of a lawn. And that's because they don't have something that they can flee into quickly. So you want like a good compromise, right? You want something about like 5 to 8 feet away from the bird bath so they can escape. And at the same time, like you just mentioned, the cats have a very, they're very talented at hiding. So if you can make the plants around your bird bath lower, that will be ideal also. You don't want these like high plants right up against the bird bath that obscures the ground. So that leveled effect would help. We have like lower plants underneath the bird bath and then expanding out into your yard if you get a little bit taller.
All right. So clean water attracts a lot of birds. So keep the bird bath clean and have that water feature where you can enjoy it and watch all the birds that come in. One noise that most homeowners get very familiar with is the thunk of a bird hitting a picture window. And when that happens, you know exactly what's happened. It's a bird plowing into the window because it didn't, I don't know what it saw or didn't see. What is the deal with window strikes?
Yeah, so windows, especially at different times of the day, are really good at reflecting the outside environment, whether that be trees or just open sky. And birds don't have the ability to tell that that's a reflective glass. So they'll keep flying towards it thinking, "Oh, this is perfect. It's an escape route." And then they'll hit the glass. So one thing you can do to help minimize that from happening is treating your windows with either decals or like a sticker tape, or you can even paint the windows. But the trick to it is that you have to have it fairly close together as a pattern. Like if you take one of those, hawk decals and stick it in the middle of your picture window, that's not going to do the trick. You need like several for it to actually help the bird see. And a lot of them are like UV decals that help reflect the light because the birds can see more UV than we can. So that's another way to help. So that's during the day how you can help them, but they also are challenged at night too. Like, so you want to close your curtains at the night so that way they don't think that that's still a path that they can fly towards. And then those bright lights at night also cause a problem, especially like in the cities during migration season where the lights kind of disoriented the birds and they can have more window strikes then as well.
Unfortunately, you can't use sounds or smells to prevent collisions. But aren't there some commercial glass products available to help prevent collisions?
Yeah, there are actually some companies now that are making bird safe glass, and they're, I think, using it in Chicago for a few buildings. With new buildings going up, if people choose bird safe glass, that's another way just to help prevent those window strikes.
And I would think, too, having maybe screens on the outside. And you have one idea in your book as well about hanging cords in front of the glass on the outside.
Yeah, if you have the space for it, that is helpful too, because again, it breaks up that reflective quality of the glass. And you also mentioned the screens. That's another great way because it just gives a slight different color. You just want to minimize that, the clearness of the glass, basically.
Let's talk about feeding birds, or I think in my neighborhood, it's more about feeding squirrels because it seems they get the bird seed first. But you can grow your own bird seed, can't you?
You can, yeah. There's a lot of plants that birds will eat the seeds from. The most popular ones that are like easy to grow are sunflowers. Kindergartners can do that, and that's an awesome way to bring birds into your garden. If you manage to get the seeds harvested before the squirrel finds them, of course. And then coneflowers are another great perennial that you can grow for the bird seed. Just like today in my garden, the goldfinches were going after the coneflowers. So in my case, like I just leave them standing. I don't actually harvest it to put in a feeder, but I'll leave it up and then they'll come and eat it throughout the fall and winter.
There is a plant we can grow here in USDA Zone 9. And it's a very odd-looking plant, but it's one of my favorites because I like odd-looking plants. It's called the Tower of Jewels. It's an Echium wild pretty eye, and it's a biennial. And for the first year, it just looks like Cousin It. It's a little green blob that sits on the ground. But the second year, it sends up a 5-foot, 6-foot stalk with just beautiful red jewel-like flowers all along the stalk. And
Oh, wow.
they last for the longest time in the spring. And then when the flowers die off, the seeds remain. And so all the little birds, the finches especially, love to just attach themselves to that stalk and pick off the seeds.
That's so cool. I just put it into Google to see what you were talking about, and that's a really neat plant. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it self sows, so if you plant it once, you will have it forever. It's more of
Yes.
a warm season plant as far as its habitat. I know it does well here in USDA Zone 9, but it's certainly it attracts the attention of a lot of people that go by.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite the statement piece, it looks like.
But certainly just growing sunflowers throughout the summer and watching the birds hit the heads this time of year is wonderful.
Absolutely, yeah. And the other, like, there's other varieties of coneflowers too that the birds will go after, like narrow leaf coneflower. There's so many in the Rudbeckia family that they will be attracted to also. So it's just scratching the surface. And in the book, there's a lot of plants that are listed that provide food to the birds.
We should point that out that there are all sorts of charts and lists of plants that attract birds for a variety of situations that you can get into. And we'll be talking a little bit about that as well. Besides seeds, you can grow fruit for your birds. I mean, I know that's why they like my blueberries. But besides that, my option is, all right, I'll just grow enough for all of us.
Yes.
And have serious conversation with the robins come May about who gets there first.
Yes, yes. They in our garden, I'm usually competing with the robins and the catbirds. And I know they're right because as soon as they start frequenting the bush, I'm like, oh, okay, it's blueberry season now. And I have to say, they usually, it's like a 75-25 split here, and they are on the 75% side of the blueberries harvested.
Well, that's right. And that's why maybe I'm getting into the habit now of trimming my plants back fairly severely after harvest to allow me to put a hoop and netting over it to protect more for myself. But I don't mind having the conversations, especially with the robins in the spring, who insist that those berries are theirs. The blueberries are theirs. They will sit on the fence right behind the blueberries and stare at me while I'm lecturing them and just squawk back at me like, oh, okay, let's have this discussion.
They're like, obviously, you're mistaken, sir.
Yes. But there are plants that produce berries that, okay, go ahead. Those are yours. And when we had acreage, I would plant a lot of those, things like manzanita, toyon, pyracanther, to name three, that produce small berries that they love. Now, especially with the toyon, which has the name Christmas berry, has the unique aspect here of producing the berries at Christmas time, and it's an evergreen plant, so it's good shelter as well as being a restaurant. So it's kind of like Howard Johnson's restaurant and motel all in one for the small birds to go after those small berries. And you mentioned in the book one of my favorite low-growing berry-producing plants. It's a low-growing manzanita, the bearberry, the Arctostaphylos uva ursi, which is just a wonderful little plant.
That is a great one. And yeah, if you can include that in your gardening plans, it's a fabulous one. Usually that one goes to the very colder USDA zones too. So that's awesome that you're able to grow it in your garden out there.
What are some of the berry-producing plants that the birds flock to back there in Connecticut?
A big one is our spice bush that is actually starting to set berries now, and that will attract a lot of the birds that are migrating through. So that's a great stopover plant. The cardinals also like that one as well. We plant a lot of elderberries. Those are very popular with the birds. And then behind my fence, back where it's kind of like a wooded area, I actually let pokeweed grow, which is
You're
a weed,
brave.
but it'll bring in the birds. So I leave it back there for them. And right now, nobody's bothering it. The birds love it. So I'll let that slide too.
And for those who don't know, pokeweed is a poisonous plant that can take over a yard because of those berries that can, of course, germinate and it gets fairly tall. It's really a gorgeous plant, the pokeweed, with those purple berries and the red stem, and it's just gorgeous. But it's a noxious weed. But yeah, it's amazing how birds can enjoy poisonous plants, and we have to, we have to watch out for them. And you mentioned one in your book I found surprising that a lot of birds like, and that's poison oak.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, right now, like poison ivy is another one that they go after. And my neighbor has a lot of poison ivy on her tree, and it's spreading throughout the neighborhood because the birds love the berries, and our neighborhood loves the birds. So we're dealing with that right now too. But yeah, if you remove the fact that it's not a great plant to have in your garden, it's a great native to feed the birds. It's one of those like catch 22s, right?
Well, you're using it as a back 40 plant, and that's perfectly fine.
Right. There you go. Yeah. And then, there's other plants that we put into like the high bush cranberries. That's a popular one that does like a nice white flower in the springtime. And choke cherries. Those are another one that's really popular out here. And those are good for like the moist areas. But again, that's another one where the birds can eat the fruit, but not the people.
It's one thing to grow food for the birds, like those berry-producing plants. So is it necessary, really, for using bird feeders to provide supplemental food?
Technically, no. Bird feeders are great because it helps, people connect with the birds, but they won't need your feeder in the wintertime to survive. And if you plant a lot of these native plants that are providing the cover, the shelter, the food, like the berries in the wintertime, you're going to naturally attract them in because they're going to be searching for those food sources. So bird feeding with the seeds is more for us, And a lot of like citizen science projects have popped up too to help monitor bird populations. One of them is Project Feeder Watch, which starts, I believe, in November and it runs through April. So that's a great way where you can track the birds coming to your garden. So technically, no, you don't need to put out a bird feeder, but a lot of people have been feeding birds, and it seems to be increasing in popularity.
Birds aren't the neatest of eaters. They drop a lot of seed and whatever else you may be putting into a bird feeder, making it very easy for squirrels and rats to get to it. I hear a lot of complaints from some of my listeners about trying to find a squirrel-proof bird feeder. Is there such a thing?
There's some that come really close. I'm not sure if we found the perfect one yet. I try to use seeds that are shellless just to minimize the debris that'll be on the bottom underneath the feeder, just to help keep everything cleaner. But yeah, I still feel like the squirrels are just so smart that they do figure out a way to get to the feeders. A lot of it is about placement. So if you put your feeder in a spot where a squirrel can't throw himself onto it, launch himself from like an arbor or a tree or a bush, that will help you a lot. And there's, some feeders where they will close the openings when the squirrel does land on it. But for the perfect one, I don't have one yet.
I'm sure we've all seen the videos of cats or of squirrels running obstacle courses and managing to get to the food.
Yes, yeah, they're very clever. And every time you try, you can see that they're, out there just basically like, okay, challenge accepted. I'm going to do this.
What are the best fillers for bird feeders? Is it still cracked corn, millet, and Milo?
For filler, usually, I kind of stay away from the filler seeds, to be honest.
Okay.
And I was like trying to think of one that was acceptable in my mind, but I find that the ratios are usually off when you do the seed blends. Like it's so heavy on like the Milo as opposed to the black oil sunflower seed. So what I do is I usually buy the straight up safflower or the straight up sunflower seed. Yeah, I would say I kind of stick to the single varieties.
Have you tried some interesting feeders like mealworm feeders?
Yes, yes. The bluebirds love them. Have you had luck with them out there?
I've never tried one.
Oh, yeah, you should give it a shot. Some people, put the live mealworms in. You can buy dried mealworms if, raising insects isn't really your thing. That's what I tend to do. I get like a dried bag of mealworms that they sell for chickens, and I'll put those out and it will track. The bluebirds and Carolina wrens here also are they also love it.
There are ground feeding birds. What is the best mix for a ground feeding bird?
So that would be like your sparrows, your mourning doves, and they will do more of like you were saying before, like those millet. They can do cracked corn, but they will also eat other seeds too. Like if you only have black oil sunflower, they'll eat that as well.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at birds that can fly that would still prefer to eat close to the ground, like the juncos.
Yeah, it's funny how they will feed on the ground and they won't go up to the feeders as much. And you're right, I really don't see juncos going to the feeders. I guess that's also similar though to how certain birds will nest on the ground, some will nest on shrubs. So it's just like those individual preferences.
Now, we talked in the beginning about how you tore out your lawn and put in plants. Was that because the backyard is too shady and that was the only spot you had sun was in the front?
That was part of the reason. I did take out lawn in the back too. I was going for both at the same time. In my backyard, I have black walnut trees, which are a great native plant, but it really limits what you can grow around the tree because they put a toxin into the ground to minimize competition with other plants. So there's a bunch of plants that have either evolved with the black walnut, they're like native plants that can, tolerate that plant toxin, or you learn the hard way ones that can't, like hydrangeas or lilacs, they don't make it. So in my front yard, I was able to plant plants that are more susceptible to black walnuts. So that was kind of what started the front yard, but then it took on its own its own character. I was growing food And then I started growing more plants to bring in the pollinators. And that's when I noticed that, like, hey, it's not just the bees and the butterflies showing up, it's the birds too. And then over time, I would say now it's definitely more of like a bird/pollinator garden in the front garden.
We mentioned that you have a lot of charts in the book for suggested plants to attract birds for your particular gardening situation. And a lot of gardeners have more shade than they used to have. Well, plants grow, and that's why you have more shade. What are some plants for, say, a shady patio that can attract the birds and the plants will do well in the shade?
Oh, so there's a lot to choose from. You can do red bearberry. That's we mentioned before. That was a plant that creates the berries that does well in the shade. Red columbine is a great plant that brings in the hummingbirds with those red flowers. I grow a lot of zigzag goldenrod in my backyard. It's different than the goldenrod that you'll see like out along the roadway that's really tall and likes the hot areas. Zigzag doesn't get as tall, but it does well with moist soil and that dappled shade.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice option to try. And there's a bunch of ferns. The nice thing about ferns is that a lot of them provide nesting material for birds. So that's awesome. There's also golden Alexandra. That one is hardy to, it's like 4 to 8 the zoning, but it's also the native plant for black swallowtail butterflies in our area. So we grow it for that reason and the other native insects that it attracts that feed the birds.
You also have in your list for the shady patio retreat for plants. You mentioned heucheras, and that heucheras are one of my favorite plants for the shade.
Yeah, and there's so many different varieties now too. It really adds that pop of color. So those are a great one.
And for those of you who are in a drought, and I think we at one point or another, everybody in America faces a drought. It could be a short-lived drought or an extended drought. We've all been through droughts, and there are water-wise native plants for every region that do attract birds. One of my favorites here in USDA Zone 9 is the agastache, the hyssop. And to me, it's a hummingbird magnet.
Yes, that's an amazing one. I'd love that one just because of the flowers and like you said, it brings in the hummingbirds. There's a lot of grasses that attract the birds too, and they'll provide not only the food for them, but like with the seeds, but also they're host plants for native caterpillars. They provide, that fall and winter interest for you as a design option, and they're usually very tolerant of the dry conditions.
Yeah, milkweed kind of falls into that since it is a caterpillar and butterfly magnet, as you might imagine. But I would think that those caterpillars make for good bird food, too.
Yeah, technically the monarch caterpillars are supposed to be toxic. That's why they are colored the way they are to warn the birds, like, don't eat me. But, there are some birds that live on the dark side and will try anyway. But there's other insects that are obviously attracted to milkweed too. So the birds will come in and grab those as well. And then, the flowers will attract them, especially the butterfly weed, the orange flowering milkweed. That'll bring in hummingbirds, which is another win, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Butterflies and hummingbirds.
Yeah, people love hummingbirds, and just to watch them in flight and their mating rituals and the fact that they're fearless, absolutely fearless when it comes to claiming territory.
Absolutely. And you have so many out there too. I'm jealous. We have the ruby-throated out here, but out west it's like a whole smorgasbord of all the different hummingbirds. It's awesome.
One of my favorite plants to attract hummingbirds, and I've got the plant sitting right outside my office window where I do all my writing and my podcasts, and it's an abutilon, a flowering maple. It's the tiger eye, and it has this beautiful bell-shaped orange and yellow and red flower that the hummingbirds really flock to. And because we're in a mild enough climate, it's an evergreen plant, and there are flowers on it 12 months a year, so there's always hummingbirds flitting about. I remember one amazing time when back during COVID, I was doing a radio show from home because they wouldn't let you into the radio station. So we did it from home, and we did it sitting here at the picture window in the office, and myself and Debbie Flower and I were sitting here talking about whatever. And then all of a sudden, this bird landed in the abutilon that neither one of us had seen before. And we both stopped mid-sentence going, "What is that?" And it turned out to be a black-hooded Oriole.
Wow.
And it was just gorgeous. It was this yellow-headed, yellow-throated bird with black wings. And it was just absolutely gorgeous. And yes, it is a West Coast Oriole. And it paid us a brief visit, interrupting our radio show, but that's okay. We stopped and we found out the information quick enough to identify it.
That is so cool. Wow. That's so cool. I'm jealous.
What do you use to identify birds?
Oh, well, I am definitely becoming a Merlin fan. Have you used that app where it
Yes.
helps?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I love it. And especially during the migration season, I just go outside, I turn it on and just kind of see who's out there, who's singing. And that also helps too when I'm looking for taking photos, because it gives me a heads up of like, oh, this is who's in the neighborhood. This is who I should be looking for. I've gotten better with identifying the songs of like the regular visitors, but a lot of those traveling migrators, I don't know their songs off the top of my head. So Merlin has come in very handy. And I also like the option where you can submit a photo. A lot of times, especially now with the migrators coming through, I'll snap a picture of somebody and I'm like, oh, who was that? I could go back to, the Audubon guides and look it up that way, but instant gratification. I put it into the Merlin app and it tells me pretty quickly like, oh, this was an American redstart. So that's pretty awesome. So I am definitely on board with the Merlin app.
I believe Merlin is a project of Cornell University's ornithological department, isn't it?
It is, yeah, yeah.
And it is. So if you're looking for accurate bird information, I would think Cornell would be the go-to place.
Absolutely. So, you don't have to worry about it being, like you're saying, like something that was created and could have not factual information. I've found that it's very accurate and it usually gives you more than you're even looking for, right? Like you can look up a range, you can find out a little description, they give you a bunch of pictures. So
you can hear the bird song as well.
yeah. Isn't that cool? But you should be careful with that too. Like when you're playing those bird songs, you don't really want to play them to attract birds to you so you can see them. So part of like being a good birder is not doing the callback just because it could distract them from, what they're doing, looking for food or whatever they're up to. But that's like one of those important things you have to you have to say. But if you're in the privacy of your home, you want to listen to all the bird songs, go for it.
You have a chapter in your book about West Coast window boxes. And a window box, if you don't have the ability to grow a flowering shrub right outside your picture window, a window box is a great idea to get the birds up close to where you can see them easier. And you list a lot of plants there that are fairly easy to grow in that window box that would do well here. Things like the salvia, the zinnias, penstemons all do well.
Yeah, that the goal with that project was if you don't have a lot of space, but you still want to feed the birds, attract the birds, there's plants that can help with that. So that was the goal with that project, was to look for things that are on more of the compact side. Some of them do get like a little big. So if you have a fairly large planter, you can, upscale a bit. But yeah, there's a lot of great options. And just because it's labeled as like, West Coast, you can grow it across other zones as well.
What if you have a swampy area and you have a chapter about it called Moisture Rich Garden? What are the plants that do well that attract birds in a moisture rich garden?
Oh, well, one of the most popular ones I would say is cardinal flower. And they have those bright red flowers that attract the hummingbirds, and they do really well in the wet soil. Button bush is another great one. I think that's hardy to your zone as well. They do great with wet soil. They get kind of large. Like the plant's not attractive just to songbirds. Like you can actually help feed ducks and shorebirds with that one too. So that's like a fun feature of that plant. And it's also great for the insects. The hummingbirds will come in on it too. And yeah, oh my gosh, what else do we have? Winterberry, that's a popular one out here, especially in the wintertime. We'll have a lot of areas along the highway that are just red berries. So those are great. Those attract the birds.
I love that you have the dinner plate hibiscus on there, the swamp mallow, the hibiscus mosquiotos, with these flowers that can get 7 to 8 inches across, with new flowers popping up every day.
Yeah, that's a fun one too. And definitely if you want that pop of color, those are great for that.
Yeah, if you have a garden with sort of a tropical effect, that hibiscus mosquiotos just looks stunning.
Absolutely. Yeah, they'll blend in really nicely.
I know that from planting a little bit of everything over my career that I've noticed the small birds love the good bird hotels, which are usually dense green, evergreen, tall shrubs. And one of my favorites for that is the Laurus nobilis, the bay laurel. And they just flock there and live there. And it's nice because we've been talking about providing food for birds, but they need shelter as well, especially the small birds, to protect themselves from predators. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, trees really make a big difference in your gardenscape. So when you're planting your garden, it's fun to be like, oh, I'm going to put these flowers in and these shrubs, but you really should also consider a tree or a couple trees that you could incorporate as well. And obviously, those native trees are going to offer the most food and shelter for the birds. There's one that's a keystone plant that Doug Tallamy always talks about. Those are the oak trees. Those are fantastic. And there are some smaller varieties of oak trees. So if you don't have the space for like the the really big ones, you can do a smaller one. But yeah, there's a lot of maples that are great. There's so many options, and they just add that layer to the top of your garden. A lot of the warblers actually will be feeding off of the leaves at the top of those trees because that's where all the insects are. So if you do want to make your garden a little bit more friendly to those warblers passing through, that's a great way to do it also.
Evergreen shrubs, too. They don't have to be as tall as a tree, but just maybe something that gets 8, 10, 12 feet tall is great for the smaller birds of the evergreen varieties. In our area, pittosporums do a great job with that. I bet the hollies do well in your area.
Yep, they do. And we have a lot of spruce too that will do well. And, in our case, we need something to help protect them from those winter winds. So those evergreens are definitely are definitely clutch. I have a bunch of arborvitaes that are so far doing well, and there's a bunch of birds that'll hang out in there in the wintertime just because they can hide inside the branches and avoid the wind.
So I've got one more question for you.
Sure.
You are the proprietor of frauzinnie.com, and which would translate as Mrs. Zinnia. What is your favorite zinnia?
Oh, the Queenie lime orange is my absolute favorite. And there's so many varieties too that it's hard to choose, but I first ran into that variety back in 2017. I was invited out to California to go to the plant trials with All America Selections. And it just happened that that year was the one they were trialing that zinnia. And I saw it in the field and I was just like, oh, I loved it. I was like, I need the zinnia. And they're like, well, if it wins, then it'll become available. I'm like, this better win. So luckily it did. And now everyone can have those seeds. So that's my favorite zinnia.
Yeah, the Queenie line zinnia is widely available, and I think they've got a lot of hybrid varieties of it as well now, too.
Yeah. There's like a rose, there's a lime, there's a whole series. So that's my favorite. Do you have a favorite zinnia?
It's sitting as a cut flower on my desk right now. The Zowie Yellow Flame.
Oh, that's a pretty one too.
Yeah, I plant a lot of it, but that's okay because interspersing these plants that attract beneficial insects is great for a healthy garden.
Absolutely. There's always room for a zinnia or two.
There you go. All right. It's Jen McGuinness. She's author of the book, Bird Friendly Gardening. For more information about her, visit her website, frauzinnie.com, FRAUZINNIE, frauzinnie.com. And she's also the author of the book, Microfood Gardening. We've been making friends with the birds here, talking about bird-friendly gardening. Jen McGuinness, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'd love chatting about birds with you.
Gardeners are saying very nice things about the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. Tessie writes in to say, I'm going to try your coffee filter germination trick to get the pepper seeds to sprout sooner. Thank you for this very helpful information in your newsletter. Laura writes in and says, you and America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, Debbie Flower, have made me a better and happier gardener with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. Tanya says, I subscribed immediately when I read your newsletter about the benefits of not pruning tomatoes. I don't do it, nor do two of my favorite French market gardeners, one of whom is a sixth-generation gardener in a long line of successful market farmers. Thank you. And Robin says, I work the help desk for my County Master Gardener program, and I find I'm sometimes overwhelmed by garden problems, disease, confusion, too much or not enough water, gophers. And I love the idea in one of your recent newsletters of keeping a gratitude journal based on daily walks in the garden. Thank you. The Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter comes out twice a week. The Friday edition is free for all subscribers. The Monday edition is available for paid subscribers. And by the way, your paid subscription to the newsletter supports not only the ongoing efforts to produce the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, it also helps to keep this podcast freely available each week. Find a link to more information about the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter in today's show notes, or at our homepage, gardenbasics.net, or you could just do an internet search for the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. And thank you for your support and encouragement to keep the good gardening conversation going. Coming up on Saturday, October 4th, I'm going to be riding my bike. Well, what's so unusual about that, you might be asking yourself? Well, October 4th is the date of the Sacramento Century Challenge. That's a 100-mile bicycling event that goes along the Sacramento River. It starts in downtown Sacramento and heads south through the Delta farmland region and loops back. And yes, 100 miles is part of the challenge. Also part of the challenge is myself. I'm 74 years old, for heaven's sakes. And no, I will not be riding an electric bike. I have plenty of acoustic bikes to choose from. Adding to the challenge will be the route itself. It's infamous for pothole-filled river levee roads, as well as ferocious northerly headwinds that are usually in your face while you're pedaling on the way back. Now, I'm doing this for a very good cause. I'm helping out the Sacramento Rotary Club raise money for the Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery. The Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery is the only program of its kind here in Sacramento County. It directly prevents child abuse and neglect by supporting families with small children at times of crisis. The nursery allows parents to bring their children, ages newborn to 5, for emergency hourly or overnight care and protection during difficult times at home. Their goal is to keep families together and reduce the number of children entering foster care. We're calling this Farmer Fred's Ride for the Kids, and we'll have a link in today's show notes with more information on how you can donate to help out the Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery and urge me onward. So how about it? Maybe you could pledge 10 cents a mile. That would be $10, along with a hearty, you go, Fred. Or maybe a more generous $1 a mile. That's $100 to help give me the mental endurance for this all-day ride. And at my age, I'll have you know, I will take my time, thank you, and enjoy the farmland scenery, and of course try to stay upright on the bike. Again, please support Farmer Fred's Ride for the Kids. Look for the link in today's show notes or at gardenbasics.net. Your support will help provide a safe place for local small children in need. Thank you for your support. Let's go. Garden Basics with Farmer Fred comes out every Friday. Garden Basics is available wherever podcasts are handed out. For more information about the podcast, as well as an accurate transcript of the podcast, visit our website, gardenbasics.net. And thank you so much for listening and your support.